Today we're doing some work on the Cyclone 4150. Before putting it away last fall for the winter, I was having some problems with the generator not running properly. It was intermittent, would run for maybe 30 minutes and then die, and slowly it would get to it, run for about 5 minutes and then not at all. Through some diagnostics, determined that it's most likely the fuel pump not operating. When you hit the prime on the generator, you should hear some clicking or hear the fuel pump running, but there's nothing. It's dead. There's no sound. So we're going to replace the fuel pump to see if that fixes the problem. I've already adapted the new fuel filter to the fuel pump so that it's all put together and I don't have to do it underneath the generator. A new fuel filter probably wasn't required, but since I have it apart, or I'm going to take it apart, I decided to go ahead and replace the fuel filter anyway. There's only about 50 hours on this particular ONAN 5500 generator, and the model is the HGJAB. There's about 3 models that are very similar, but mine happens to be the HGJAB, and this is the fuel filter that goes with it. You should be able to hear the fuel pump pumping, which is right underneath here. And I'll show you from the bottom here in a little bit. But when you do the prime button, which you can do here from the generator itself or inside remotely, when you push the stop prime button, you should get the light, and in a second or two the light should come on, and you should hear the fuel pump clicking or motoring as it's priming the fuel system. If you listen, I can't hear anything, so that's one of the reasons I think that it's my fuel pump rather than something else mechanically. They recommend that you prime for about 30 seconds, and when I hit start here, it may start, but it probably won't run more than about a minute or two if it starts at all. Nothing, so we're going to start tearing it apart to get to the fuel filter and the fuel pump. Right here on the left side, you can see the connections for the fuel pump. I've disconnected those now before I go underneath, so when I drop the fuel pump, they can slide through this opening here and the fuel pump doesn't get hung up. And then we'll re-thread them up through the bottom here once we get the new fuel pump installed. They've made it pretty easy to connect. One is a flat blade and one is the female side for the flat blade connector, so it's pretty much impossible to get the connections wrong. Looking up from the bottom, this here is the fuel pump as it's mounted. There's a couple of bolts either side of the fuel pump that hold it up there, so we'll drop those 2 bolts. Hopefully there's enough slack that we can pull the fuel pump down, reconnect the connections. There's a little hose clamp there on the fuel pump that keeps it secure, and we'll put the hose on the other side when we drop it down. All right, using a 10mm socket, we're going to get up here and loosen the bolts that are holding the fuel pump in. Because of the clamps that are holding the fuel hose to the top of the fuel pump, I'm going to get some just regular hose clamps to put on there, so to make it a lot easier in the event I have to change this again. After disconnecting the fuel line from the top side of the fuel pump, I'm now able to drop this down and get to it a little bit better so I can disconnect the hose clamp right here. As mentioned, we'll get a regular hose clamp make it a little easier to get on than the manufactured one. They don't go on quite as easy as an aftermarket one. Okay, I've got the new fuel filter and fuel pump in. As you can see, I put just a standard hose clamp in there. Make it a little bit easier if I have to take it off again. I've fed the wires for the fuel pump back up through the little grommet that goes through the bottom of the generator plate, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll mount the new fuel pump up there and tighten the bolts back in there. All right, so now we'll connect the hose for the top part of the fuel pump. Sliding that down in there. Make sure we got our hose clamp in there, and we'll tighten the hose clamp down. Then we will connect our wires and do a test run. We're going to do a test of the prime, and as you can hear, you can hear the fuel pump going back there. That would lead me to believe that that was the problem, and we should get a good start off after about 30 seconds of priming the fuel pump. All right, we'll release the prime after priming for 30 seconds. As you may be able to hear in the background, you can hear the generator running, but we've been running now for about 40 minutes, and it hasn't hiccuped, it hasn't sputtered, it hasn't oscillated like generators like to do. I'm going to count this one as a success, not having a lot of experience with mechanical issues and items. Like I said, I kind of like to break things. I'm not very good at fixing things, but in this case, a fairly simple fix saved me a few dollars taking it to the repair place and having them charge me for their service fees. With the filter, with the fuel pump, and a few hose clamps, less than $50 in parts, about an hour and a half of my time, another 40 minutes testing the generator to make sure that it's running, putting a little bit of a load on it. So pretty simple. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for taking a look. If you have any questions about this procedure, just hit me up in the comments below and I'd be happy to answer.